What's going on? We're going to take this garden area and take it from looking like this to having it looking like this by building a strong foundation wall. It is going to be quick and easy, should take just about a day. So let's get started. So the first step is to dig out a trench about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep and as wide as the materials that you're using. And you really just want to get any debris, any rocks, any roots that might hinder your way. And you just want to make it as straight as possible and as flat as possible. Next, I'm going to follow up with using a non-permeable plastic sheet. And you're just going to lay that across the entire trench. And then you're going to come back and cut to the height that you want it to be. I like to cut it to the height where the soil is going to be. So it doesn't have to be too high, but for this purpose, I'm actually going to make it as high as the entire retaining wall. Then you're going to follow up with some gravel. This will help with drainage, and then you're going to follow up with some sand. This will help to level it out, and sand is a little bit easier to work with than dirt or soil. Then you're just going to use a tapper. Just going to tap it and make it as flat as possible and condense it so you can work with it. Next, I'm going to run over with a ruler and make sure that it's as flat as possible. For areas that have any dips, I'm just going to fill it in with some sand to fill in those dips and to make sure that I maintain a 90 degrees or flat surface for this. And as a tip, when you're picking out your wood, you just want to make sure there are no knots in the wood, or as little knots as possible, knots or weak points. So you just want to make it as strong as possible by reducing the amount of knots in your pieces of wood. So I like to lay out my wood next to the trench just so I know where I need to dig my rebar. And for this one, I'm going to measure how deep I want the rebar to go, and then also how high I want the rebar to be. So I'm going to mark it with some tape and then tap it into the ground and making sure that it's even. And you're going to continue this for the remaining amount of rebar that you have, just to maintain the consistency in the height. Now this step is totally optional. I like to use a guide wire just so I'm maintaining a straight accord with the rebar, but again, it's totally optional. You don't have to use that. And because some of my rebar was longer than what I actually needed, I'm using an angle grinder to make it a little bit smaller. If you know of any other tools I can use to cut into rebar, let me know in the comments. And then after that, you're going to mark your wood that you have laid out just so you know exactly where to drill into. Now for me, I like to do 2 pieces at a time, but I'm not drilling into both at the same time. I'm drilling as far as the drill will allow for me to go, and then I can use that as a template to mark where the second piece is going to go. Just because I'm doing 4 levels, it helps it make it a little bit more consistent. So after you're done drilling, it's just time to lay down the first level, and it should go down pretty easily. And if you need to, you can just use, a hammer just to knock it into place. And then I like to follow up by laying the second layer on top and then hammering a nail that is long enough to go through both and pretty thick as well. This just creates a really strong base for the first 2 levels. And then once you have the first 2 levels down, you can just check to see if there's any corrections you need to make. I do have a gap because I am going to make an adjacent layer, and I'm going to do that next. So you're basically going to do the exact same thing. You're going to dig out a trench. You're going to make it as even and smooth as possible. You're going to then measure to make sure that the wood piece is as straight as possible. If it's not, don't worry about it, because we are going to lay down the plastic sheeting and then lay down some gravel and sand to make it as even and smooth as possible. And then once you're happy with the level, you're just going to use the same type of spikes that we used to connect the second layer to the base level, just so it has a foundation. You could use a rebar if you want to, but for this one, I found that the spikes works just as well. And then we're going to lay that second layer on top. We're going to use some gravel, use some sand, compact it inside the areas that have a gap between the ground and the wood piece. Pack it in as hard as possible, and then you're going to drill and use the same type of spikes or a smaller spike, depending. For this one, I use a smaller spike to go into the first piece of wood, and then I use a bigger spike to go directly into the gravel, into the ground. And you're going to repeat this process for the remaining adjacent wood pieces that you're doing. So once the adjacent pieces are done, now you can just repeat the process and do your third and fourth layer. And because originally I was going to do 6 layers, I changed it to 4. So I'm going to cut my rebar to size. So I'm cutting off about 8 inches to fit the final layer that I'm going to use. So we're about to put on the final layer of wood, and there's 2 ways you can do it. Because I'm capping it, I'm just going to screw right through and just place it on top. If you're not capping it and you're just leaving it as this, then what I did was I left about 2 inches here. This is a 4x4, so I'm going to screw in maybe 3 inches of drilling, and you just want to measure it on your drill bit, mark it with tape, and then you'll see exactly how far you need to go, so you don't go too far and hit the other side of the wood, and make sure that you have enough room to insert the rebar. But since I am going to cap it with a top piece of wood as a seat or something just to look a little bit more presentable, I'm just going to drill right through it. But again, that's an option if you don't want to cap it. If you do, you just don't want to drill all the way through so it's not exposed when you do put your final layer on. So after you're done laying everything down, whether you cap it or not, I like to secure top piece of wood to the piece that's right underneath it, just to hold it in place. So usually I do like 1 here, 1 in the middle, 1 at the end. Makes it really secure. It's not going to move anywhere, and it's using everything else that's been anchored below it as stabilization. So I definitely probably suggest to get one of these stabilizing galvanized screws, depending on the length or the width of your piece of wood that you're using. I believe this is 8 inches, this is 4, so it definitely will go into both pieces. So just make sure you get one that is galvanized, since it is outside, so you don't have to worry about rust, and it's long enough to go through the first piece and the second piece at least. All right, let's finish off this last part, and then we'll be on to capping. So before we put the cap on there, we're going to staple the plastic to the wood. The reason why I use non-permeable plastic is because pressure treated wood is treated with chemicals, and since it's the garden, I don't want the chemicals to seep into the soil, so this will prevent that from doing so. And also it helps protect the wood from rotting, but pressure treated wood should last about 10, 15, 20 years without any maintenance. But so you can just get a regular handy dandy stapler. Heavy duty one is the one I'm using, since pressure treated wood is a lot denser and stronger than regular wood. And because I am capping it, I am just going to cap it like this, staple it, and once you cap it, you won't be able to see the plastic. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. And now I'm going to cap it. I like to use a 45-degree angle. It just makes it a little bit nicer. And then once you lay it on top, you just want the corner to go towards the corner of the two pieces of wood. I like to use galvanized wood screws. Again, they won't rust and they will hold on pretty good to any type of weather condition or people sitting on this bench. And I like to use a impact drill when I am drilling in the screw, just because pressurized wood is a little bit denser, it is a little bit stronger, and it helps create a flush finish so no one will be catching any clothing item on a piece of nail. It goes pretty deep into the wood. And once you have your final piece, I mean, that's basically it. This is your final screw, and it should come out the way that you would like for it to look. So there you have it, how to create a strong wood retaining wall. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments of the materials or the process. If you need some clarifications, I'm here to help. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and like it as well if you like this video, so you don't miss out on any other projects or any other financial news, because that's what I love to do. But till next time, peace.